Hello and welcome to today's episode of Courage Permission Slip. I, of course, am your host, Kia, and today I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming a longtime friend, a fellow Chicago Southlander, fellow Illini, Christina Steed, to the show. And before we get started, let me tell you just a little bit more about her. Christina is an award-winning communications expert, writer, host of the First Over 40 podcast, an adjunct professor at DePaul University, and is an avid traveler. And let me just say, that little soundbite is not even scratching the surface of all the things that are on Christina's plate, all of her accomplishments, but we only have a little bit of time today. So Christina, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kia. Thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to be on the podcast. You know, I am your biggest fan. And yes, we go back to high school, not even just college, high school.
Yes. Marian Catholic.
That's right. Go Spartans.
So Christina, before we dive in, I really feel so strongly about this work that you're doing to be so outspoken about being an introvert in an extrovert rewarding world, and your career path of being in communications, PR, journalism, dealing with crisis communications, global communications. These are things that you don't envision an introvert doing, excelling in, being successful in. And so I would really love to hear from you, how do you navigate being an introvert in a very extroverted profession? And what's your unique approach to doing that?
So thanks, Kia, for the question. I am a part of a growing introvert movement and really highlighting Black people who are introverted, because I think some of the stereotypes and perceptions that we as Black people have to push up against sometimes don't allow for an introverted preference. And so being in the communications field, yes, you would think most people who do communications are extroverts, but in fact, there are not. There are a lot of people who are in communications who are introverted because they enjoy writing, they enjoy reading, they are good listeners. So then they can think through strategy and come up with plans and tactics that make sense for a client, an individual doing celebrity promotion, whatever. So for me, it's been, what can I lean into my strengths as it relates to the work and how I approach it? And knowing that strategy is like a big thing for me. So a lot of the work that I do now is around developing strategy and plans, giving counsel, being the cool mind in a crisis situation. Like extroverted people might be more performative or want to, let everybody in on their anxiety. Whereas I'm coming in the room, I'm surveying what's going on, I'm thinking through the facts, and then I'm coming up with the solution because I'm not interested in the performance of it all. So, but yeah, it's definitely tough. And even thinking about how I stretched myself in my career, going from PR person, writer to a new business development person, right? So thinking through, how am I going to approach new business? I can't even go to networking events and talk to people. I'm in the corner with my drink by myself and leaving after 30 minutes. So I had to think through, how can I do new business in a way that respects my introverted preference, but also gets results? And a lot of that was connecting with people on LinkedIn or making connections on a one-on-one basis, or really doing great work and letting that work speak for itself and asking for referrals. So I think, introversion is getting like a life right now. There's more conversation about it. And as more people have had to work remotely, they have been leaning into the strength of introversion, right? Because that's all about listening, paying attention. You can't kind of like shrink away in a meeting, like you could maybe in person. So it's been a great kind of conversation for sure.
Yeah, I love that. And I love a couple of things that you mentioned, thinking back on my marketing career. And I remember being in meetings at the agency that I worked at, and we had a global client that is in many respects about some of the performative things. And I remember my manager saying, okay, well, when we go into this meeting, everyone has to have an opinion. And that, I mean, I would almost retreat, right? Like I would contract because that would bring up more anxiety. And I definitely am a fine line between introversion and extroversion,
Mhm.
but that would sap my energy before even walking into the room. So
Yeah.
I completely relate to that, but I also love you talking about designing your strategy for, networking and business development. And as you were talking, because a lot of my clients will ask, how do I, like, I'm really nervous around people. How do I
Mm.
network from that standpoint? And in looking at my strategies that I give to them, they're very introvert focused strategy of
Mhm.
using LinkedIn, identifying people that you definitely want to connect with, right? And not a whole bunch of people, but who are 2 or 3 people that you want to connect with? And then give yourself a time limit, right? So
Mhm.
just hearing you talk, that approach is like the introverted kind of like safe,
Yeah.
honoring your preference kind of
Mhm.
approach. So I really, really appreciate you sharing that and being outspoken on that, because it is so important. Not every personality um, is set up to thrive,
Yep.
or is their preference isn't honored. And so
Mhm.
when they have those kind of like neurodivergent
Yeah.
approaches to things, they're seen as not engaged, not
Right.
proactive. And it's important to keep kicking up that conversation to start shifting that mindset.
Absolutely. And it's important for extroverted leaning folks to understand that. So if they're
Right.
managing someone who's more introverted,
Right.
if they're having a personal relationship with someone who is more introverted, they're understanding how
Mhm.
to interact with this person. When you say at the agency, someone telling you to have something to say, just to say something, it is
Yes.
how people perceive value. What are we going to place
Yes.
value on? Well, it's this person who is talking, but did they really say anything? Or are they
Hmm.
just talking to
Hmm.
be heard? Because we have
Right.
to assign a value. If we're paying for you to be here, then we want you to say something. So just
Yes.
rethinking
Oof.
those dynamics, and how we assign value to people, and knowing that there's a lot of strength and power in introversion for sure.
Absolutely. 1000% agree. Oh, really, really appreciate this perspective. And I hope that this is helpful and really permission slip giving to someone who has been kind of lurking in the shadows and feeling less than, and their self-worth has been attached to that. So really
Mhm.
thankful for that perspective.
Yeah. And there's a lot of resources out there for people who are introverted. Susan Cain, who's written a book,
Mhm.
the Hush Loudly podcast that talks about
Yes.
leadership in that.
Mhm.
So please reach out and know there are many of us out there.
You are not alone.
That's right.
The important reminder.
Mhm.
So again, this is all about courage permission slips. And so for you, Christina, would love to hear from you. When you hear the word courage or see it or hear it spoken, what does it mean to you?
So very interesting that the name of your podcast would be courage, because my word for 2020 was courage. I choose a word every year to lean into, to thread through my life, and it was courage. And my sign is a Leo. So what are the lions known for? It's courage. But again, being an introverted lion, I am I struggle with that sometimes. And so for me, courage is living my life more fully and having freedom. And freedom, as I'm going to quote Nina Simone, means no fear. Like
Mm,
taking fear
mm,
out of every single
mm,
thing, because I'm always wanting to do things perfectly. I don't
mm,
want to make a mistake. I don't
mm.
want to, have something go wrong. And like, what is that? That's not life. But and that's probably from childhood, just thinking through how to perform as a child and be the right student and show up as
Yes.
the right, the perfect person. And so
Mhm,
that's been something that I've had to unpack with
mhm.
therapy, with books, with, however
Yes.
we do our self-care
Yes.
and
Yeah.
self-awareness. So courage for me is taking out these bits of fear that I have in my life. And it's related to my writing. It's related to opportunities that I might take. It's related to risks or me being risk averse. Like I'm a moderate investor. I'm very risk averse. So how do I, kind of stop this fear? And now that I'm at this beautiful decade of life where I have a track record of success. So I have systematically been doing well. Now I can kind of like, okay, let's lean into things that I may not have done before or may not have taken a chance on. So that's kind of the root of courage for me, is the absence of fear. And fear for a lot of people is protection, right? We're protecting ourselves against what we think, what we worry about, what we've seen happen to others. But again, we need to live our lives fully. We need to take those chances. And so really that's what courage is for me.
Yeah. So I'm going to dig in a little bit more, and you know me.
Come on.
So as you think about living life fully and having a moment in time and being at this beautiful point in your life where you are considering exploring things that maybe you haven't leaned into as much, what is something that you are considering giving yourself permission to lean into now?
So I'm considering two things. One is to really honestly commit to publishing my book, to the writing of my book. I've had several ideas germinating. I've written several different drafts. I've had several different people read and edit things that I've written. But when it comes to like putting it out there, I'm an artist and I'm sensitive about my stuff. So I don't put it out there. And I had someone say to me, you cheat the world when you do not put your creativity out there, and you show up for everybody else, but you don't show up for your own creativity. And I have a post-it note on my desk that says, that I read every day now, how am I going to show up for who I want and believe I can be today and every day? Just to remind myself to do that. And then the second thing, which is kind of off the wall, but I'm gonna put it out here because it'll be recorded and I'll be held accountable, is my interest in potentially doing like a bed and breakfast, running a proprietor of a bed and breakfast one day. My husband and I are renovating an old home here in Chicago, and there's enough space for me to potentially do something like that. And a great aunt had a bed and breakfast in Algonquin, Maine. And I've always been attracted to her life and what she's done. And she's actually one of the subjects of the stories that I'm trying to write about. So that's something that I'm considering. And again, been a communications person my whole life. And that might be a road that I tread one day. So.
And I'm laughing secretly, not at you, but with you, because we've been talking about this book for a minute, girl.
Yes, we have. Yes, guilty.
Yes. So this whole notion of putting things out into the universe, and the world is waiting for you. And, we can't be cheated of your gifts any longer, Christina. So chop, chop.
Chop, indeed. Yes. I need to get a move on.
So those two things aside, how did giving yourself permission to be courageous, to step outside of your comfort zone, how did that lead you to where you are right now?
So the permission is key, like granting myself the ability to do certain things, to let go of certain relationships that didn't serve me, to stop playing small and like really step into greatness, to show up as the full me. Like I literally had to regroove pathways in my mind around how I thought I should show up at certain events or be connected to certain people. And that was hard work. And it's still a work in progress, because once you do it, you're still thinking about it. You're like second guessing, like, did I make the right choice? Is that right? Is that too harsh? But at the end of the day, I want peace. I want peace. And so for me to have peace, I had to show up for me again, like
Yes.
in personal
Yes.
relationships. Like I have to put me first. I can't always put other people ahead of myself because the whole airbag adage we all know,
Yes.
it's true. And again, this is a continuous day-to-day wake up with the affirmations, with the journaling, to make that choice to choose me and God every day.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And that what you said there, Christina, this, I mean, it's almost like this should be like a subhead of this show, because that is one thing that is consistently that I hear, that certainly I advise people on, is that it is not you flip a light switch of making the choice and then it's done. And then it's, forevermore, it's easy and it's peaceful and smooth and all these things. This is something that you, first of all, the way that we are, the way that we show up in the world, our personalities, our like idiosyncrasies, we've had our whole lives to build that muscle up. We've had our
Right.
whole lives to build those pathways in our brains. And
Mhm.
so just because you wake up one day and say, oh, I'm going to be courageous today and let go of these relationships that don't serve me, right? You can make that decision very simply,
Mhm.
but to do that work
Mhm.
is, it is work, right? I
Yes.
mean, it is, you are building this muscle and you are
Yep.
working it and trying it and adjusting over and over and over again. And the only time that the work is done is when you have transitioned out of this world. We
That
are
part.
always evolving. We are always learning and growing because we're not in a vacuum, right? We're
Yeah.
getting feedback from the world. We're getting feedback from our bodies,
Mhm.
from our intuition. And these are all cues of how we continue adjusting while working this muscle. So I'm really, really glad that you shared that
Mhm.
this is something that every day you have to wake up. Okay, I'm gonna run through these affirmations, right? I'm
Mhm.
gonna sit in prayer. I'm gonna connect with the divine, and let those things be your guide
Mhm.
as you are building up that muscle,
Right.
and resilience to keep moving forward in the face of,
Yep.
enter issue here.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's like working out. It
Yeah.
literally is. And it works if you work it. If you
Yes.
don't work it, it's not
Yes.
going to work. And,
Yes.
when you think about what you do in terms of coaching, coaching is so critically important in terms of an investment in your own personal development.
Absolutely. Mhm.
And how much, when you think about each year of your life, how much are you investing in your personal development?
Mhm.
How much are you
Mhm.
investing?
Mhm.
And you sometimes you need the help of a trainer to
Yes.
get you on the path. And it's not a one-time deal. It's like,
No.
how do I continue again to, like you said, exercise this muscle, build it up, and especially in times of joy, because then you're
Yes.
like building up your
Mhm.
arsenal, putting
Mhm.
your trust in your trust bank so that when stuff hits the fan, you have your tools. You're not
Yes.
totally caught
Yes.
unaware. You're like not
Yes.
flailing. You're like,
Mhm.
okay,
Mhm.
this is my practice. Let me go to it. And it's not easy. It's not,
No.
stuff.
No.
It's hard out here in these streets. Like
It is.
COVID coming back, people dying, like
Yes.
2022 not acting
Yes.
right. So it's
Yes.
like, how do we reset, get back
Yes.
to ground zero? And even thinking about, so when you talked about courage, so if
Mhm.
you think about the serenity prayer, so God
Mhm.
grant me the serenity to
Yes.
accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Difference.
Courage to
Mhm.
change the things I can. So it
Yes.
takes bravery, courage,
Yes.
consistency to change.
Yes. 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 I mean, I can't put it any better than that. I just can't. And anyone that sells that quick fix, you do this and these things will happen, that is something you do not want to invest in,
Right.
because it is there's a whole part of that formula that's being left out,
Mhm.
and that is the work that you have to put in consistently.
Yep. Yep.
Consistently. So good. Oh, little sidetrack. So you talked about words of the year. Have you chosen a word for 2022?
I have. It's freedom. And
Love
again,
it.
it's rooted in the
Yes.
freedom from fear.
Yes.
No fear. No fear. Like I've heard Nina Simone say that quote 11 times. And this year it rang. It
Yes.
landed, Nina. Like it
Yes.
landed. Okay, I
Yes.
get it. I get it
Yes.
now. So that's the
Yes.
type of freedom
Yes.
I want in my life, in my personal life, in my
Mhm.
professional, in my creativity. And that's part of my writing issue, that
Mm.
I don't feel
Mhm.
free in my writing. Like I
Mm.
feel like no one wants to read this crap. Da, 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 da. And and I know I can do it because I'm not lazy. I'm a very like
No.
accomplished professional. So I know it's
Yes.
not the
Yes.
laziness, it's something that I'm coming up against. And so I want to be
Yes.
free from the fear and just do it.
Yes. Yes. Um, so first of all, y'all, Christina is driven, right? With a capital D, driven. So that absolutely is not the issue. And in terms of fear, the thing that, I want to invite, and I know you and I have talked about this, is, fear is a part of life. However, it is recognizing that it's there and shifting the relationship with it, right? Because fear can't be bigger than the thing that it is that we're wanting to do, the direction that we're trying to go, what we're trying to call in. And so with the exception of, running out into the middle of the street, it can't, fear cannot hurt you, right? It can fortify you, but
Mm.
it's important to shift the relationship with it, which I think is one thing that's so difficult for people because, and this is just the way our brains are set up, negativity bias. We automatically go to the worst case scenarios, but rarely do we look at the other side of the coin. So love that word freedom. That's actually one of my core values. So I am with you on that. And that was actually the word that I am focusing on this week. So
Okay.
with
Nice.
that, so speaking of fears, and you've talked about this a little bit, but what fears pop up for you now as you're thinking about things that you're giving yourself freedom to step into?
I think the one thing now is, as I'm realizing, I I can do these things that I want to do. I've identified some goals. I've identified some big rocks. Running out of time. Like I
Mm.
have a fear of running out of time to do this. So um
Mm.
that's kind of what's creeping in my mind. But I again, daily the
Yes.
daily work, sitting
Yes.
down and
Yes.
just thinking it through and just doing it and moving these things forward. So but that's a big one.
Mm. So just a personal note, when you said that, Christina, like I felt a rise in me because that is actually something that comes up for me. I am going to be 46 this year. And I think for me, like all the things I'm wanting to create and call in, and I'm like, oh, but
Mhm.
is there enough time to do this? Is there enough time for me to create these
Mhm.
things that I'm trying to create? And then of course I have to think about all the stories of people that didn't hit their stride until they were
Right.
70 and 80 and things of that nature.
Mhm.
But you saying that, Christina, I connect with that a lot.
Mhm.
And I don't readily name that as one of my fears, but you calling that in is something
Mhm.
that I was just thinking about just the other day. So
Mhm.
that's deep. It's deep.
Yeah, it is. And it's what do they say? Like the graveyard is the place of dreams unrealized. Like I don't want to take my dream to the grave. I want it to
Yes.
be in this
Yes.
world.
Yes.
So, and
Yes.
I know that's up to me.
That's right.
So I need to get busy.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Les Brown, I'm misquoting it, but he
Mhm.
said like the cemetery is the
Yes.
place with the biggest potential of all the
Yep.
people that died with their dreams still on their
Mhm.
heart for a variety of reasons, right? Like there's so many reasons why our dreams never see the light of day.
Right.
Ooh, Yes.
And the big part of it is having it cornered, like knowing what the dream is, right?
Yes. Yes.
Like we know we have some goals, we have some things we want to do. So now it's just getting on the path to doing them,
right.
and not
Right.
being derailed by fear.
Yes, yes, yes. And the other part of that, the fear, and people get so wrapped up in how.
Yes.
How am I going to do this? I know, generally speaking, what I want to do. And sometimes that's all you need to know is a general destination, right? But then people then start getting all wrapped up in how.
Yeah.
How do I do this? How's it going to work? How am I going to make money? How?
Yeah.
All these things. And when you focus on that, when you focus too much on the how as opposed to the what, that is going to kill your creativity, your inspiration, possibility every single time.
Yeah.
Every time.
So true. And that's me. I'll research. I will figure out the best way. I'll do all the research and have my notes and everything, but in seat writing, like I will escape it. And I have a counterpart, my husband, who is the opposite. Like he focuses on the what. He launches into it with no fear and just does it. I'm like, oh man, I wish I could do that.
But you can. You're free.
Yes.
Word of 2022.
That part. Yes. Thank you for the reminder.
Yes. So when you think about the fear of running out of time, Christina, how are you tackling that now, right? Like thinking about this phase and this permission that you're giving yourself of being free. How are you tackling or planning to tackle that fear of running out of time?
Good question. And Kia, I don't have the answer for it. And it's okay. What I'm doing is taking it day by day to doing the things that spark joy, that bring creativity, that make me feel get me closer to the person that I'm wanting to be. And I feel good about who I am. Like I reflect on, who I was at 15, and is this the woman that I wanted to be at my lovely age? And it is. I did want to be someone who had accomplished things and done work in a field and gone to college and things like that. But I also wanted to be this writer. And so now it's, can I fulfill the dreams of that 15-year-old? Can I get back to the wonderment and the openness of that 15-year-old who, was committed to this goal? And so I try to extend grace to myself around the time, and also try to remind myself time is not linear. Which is some another supernatural stuff for another podcast, but just getting away from that and doing the work, doing the thing, bringing life to the creation, and it will be fine. So that's again, the coaching, the internalizing, the regrooving, so I can bring forth what I'm supposed to bring forth.
Yeah. I love that you talked about reflecting on your 15-year-old self, right? And then kind of future pacing to now. And I've not asked this question publicly, but I'm going to ask you, what would you say to your 15-year-old self?
Oh, relax. Relax. I was so tight and wanting to do everything perfectly and wanting to show up perfectly, and my goodness, I was stressed, and not stressed like now, but just an unnecessary stress for someone at that age. I wanted to get the right part-time job. I wanted to do the great in school, which did all those things, but I would have just said relax, like live, play more. And I try to play now. I try to have play is important. So
important.
Try to bring play into my life now. So yeah, definitely I would say relax.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for letting me ask you that question. And the relax thing as a recovering, because it's never done, as a recovering type A perfectionist, I have to have that check-in with myself even now, right? Of like, okay, it's fine. No one's going to die.
Right.
No one is going to die because you didn't say it the exact right way, or you didn't do it the right way. And I will say, I just did an Instagram post on this, Christina, about how I worked myself into a tizzy just a few days ago because I realized how locked into a certain pathway I was about something. And it's like, Kia, it's fine. Like, you leaning on this word free, like, you are free to do whatever you want, however you want to do it, right? Like, what's right for someone else, calling in the lessons of this season of Cobra Kai, just because it's right for someone else
Right.
doesn't mean it's right for you, right? Like, you can take learnings and inspiration and guidance,
Right.
but at the end of the day, you still have to make it yours. You still have to infuse you know, your God-given talent, uniqueness, gifts, that all has to be infused. And if you're taking what other people are doing and really like not honoring who you are, you're going to lose every time.
Yes.
You're going to be stressed every time. You're going to be in a tizzy every single time. And so I had to talk myself off that ledge just the other day of like, the only right way is my way.
Wow.
Period.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes. So this is an ongoing journey, conversation, discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that type A stuff, man. that perfectionism, man. Like, it would be for me to the point where if the spoons aren't the right way in the drawer, I'm getting upset. Like, come on, relax.
Oh, one of my, so now we're talking about, you know, type A tendencies. One of my type A things is my routine. I am so locked into my routine. If I don't have just the right amount of time to do this thing, then I'm like, well, okay, my whole day is going to be ruined. At 5:30 in the morning, I'm already like, well, the day is lost. Can't, you know, I think especially in the pandemic, in the early days of the pandemic, I was like, okay, this is what's happening. You are creating this pain for yourself. So, yeah.
Right.
Airing a lot of dirty laundry in this.
but a lot of people go through it. Yes. So it's like, you know, and even when you think about the purpose of therapy, the purpose of coaching, when you're in a group setting, when you hear somebody else speak their journey and speak their stuff, you're like, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only person going through this. Okay, let me see how they are working it through so I can take some strategy.
Right. And so the important takeaway from what you just shared, Christina, because I hear leaders talk about this, right? I speak with other leadership and executive coaches about this, where people are so afraid to be vulnerable. Afraid to be vulnerable because, you know, the like toxic masculinity, you know, patriarchal way of thinking is you can't show weakness. You can't show that you're feeling any kind of way. And
no mercy, Cobra Kai, no mercy.
Right. And so being vulnerable has gotten a bad rap. Up until the last few years, right? Where now people are starting to see that there's a lot of power, a lot of strength in being vulnerable, because that, first of all, lets other people know that you are a human being.
Yeah.
Right. You are a human being having a human experience, and that you are not any different. You are not on a different, you know, plane or pedestal than anyone else. And so that, you know, that endears trust. You know, people are drawn to you as opposed to repelled, because they are like, oh, they're a real person having the same issues that I'm having. And so that is something that it took me many years to agree to. And it was a coach. It was one of my first coaches that was like, why are you not sharing emotion? And I was like, because I don't want my peers, I don't want my managers to think that I'm, you know, either the angry Black woman, or
Right.
that I am, that I am movable,
Yeah.
right?
To be trifled with. Yeah.
Right,
Mm-hmm.
right. And so it was that coach, her name was Anna Polanco, who helped me to see that tapping into your emotions can actually be a power move, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And so I have to remember that, as even now, I mean, this was like 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, I still have to have that conversation and that check in with myself of, if you share this, you're going to give other people the strength to share it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I co-sign on that wholeheartedly. It took a lot of unraveling of
Yes.
the strong, I can't, I'm the strong friend.
Yes,
So
yes.
I was shorting myself, not showing up, being vulnerable. And
Mhm.
when I did do that, when I did say, actually, I'm hurting, I need help, there's
Yes.
something going on
Yes.
with me.
Yes.
And let me keep it real. Some people could handle it and other people couldn't, because they were so used to me being in a
Right.
space and showing up for them in a
Yes.
way.
Yes.
And when I had to be like, dude, I need to get over something, I'm having issues.
Yeah.
Oh, it was hard for them to process. And so
Yeah.
the great, falling away of certain
Right.
people in your life.
Right. Right.
So yeah,
Right.
that I definitely experienced that.
Yeah. Yeah. And no one says that this work is going to be painless
Mhm.
and that everyone's going to be dolly friends forevermore. There are tough decisions that will be made, tough conversations that will be had when you decide to really step into your fullness and to be who you truly are, warts and all, vulnerability and all, troubles and all. And as you said, some people are for that journey with you in all of that, and some people are not. And, the people that are not, be blessed. And that opens the door for those who can be that for you, and more than you could have ever imagined.
Yeah,
Mm.
absolutely. Right. Preaching on
Ah,
today.
Christina, this is rich. This is rich. So we have talked a lot about fears and, kind of like the way that we lock ourselves and paint ourselves into a corner that create stress and strife. And I would love to hear from you, Christina, because there is someone who is watching this, listening to this, who has a dream, who has a goal, who has a vision, or even an idea on their heart, but they're not taking steps because the fear is still too big, too important. What guidance do you have for that person?
So I would start with give yourself grace, because I'm sure if it's been on your heart for a long time and you haven't done it, you've been beating yourself up about it. Like, man, I could have been done this 3 years ago. So even that energy doesn't serve you. So
Absolutely.
that's something that I've learned, is start with giving yourself grace.
Mhm.
And then how you typically approach doing something for someone else, turn it on yourself. Like if it's you need to set deadlines, if it's you need to do some research, if it's you need to get an accountability partner for, whatever you're trying to do, like hack your way into
Yes.
how to best support yourself to get to your goal or your idea. Set some timelines up for yourself. And if there are some people who feel like they need to be as prepared as possible before they get to executing on their idea or even sharing it publicly. Make a decision to say, all the answers are within me. And if I don't have them, I will have access to them, because that's how my God works. That's how my universe works. I don't chase, I attract. So it's going to come to me.
Yes.
So just kind of, I think those are some seeds to plant in terms of getting to that mindset of being able to get after those goals and that idea and then make them manageable, right?
Yes.
Like, losing 50 pounds in 2 weeks, no. Or starting that business that's going to be $1 million in, a month, like,
Right.
yeah, no. And to your point,
Right.
like you see these Instagram stories and this social media life that will have you messed up. Will
Yes.
have you messed up. And
Yes.
if that's the case, turn that stuff off. Like
Yes.
what you're planting in your mind, the seeds that are in your mind, you can control that. You can take the weeds out. You can till the soil and create a mindset that's going to help you to grow to where you want to be.
Right.
And this is me preaching to you and to me, right? Like,
oh yes.
It's me too.
Yeah. Yes. And that social media piece cannot be underscored enough, because we are on, social media is just a highlight reel, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you are only seeing the best. And even when people do share, a vulnerable moment, an issue that has arisen, you still aren't seeing the whole picture, right? And so it's so important to remember that that what you see is only a little snapshot, and there's so much more going on, and you can never fully know what someone has been through, the timeline that they have gone through to get to where they are. And especially if you are in a place of still uncertainty, if fear is continuing to be that bigger monster, right? Seeing what's happening on social media, or even watching any of those reality shows, where how deeply edited those things are, right? And if you are in any state of uncertainty, you cannot get your inputs from social media, because it will have you 6 ways from Sunday.
That's right.
And because you're consuming what other people are doing and not listening to what your own voice is saying to do, which, as you said so perfectly, you have the answers. You may not know that you have the answers, but they live within you. At least, the first step or the first kernel of an answer lives within you. Don't look for external guidance on that.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, that, and it's hard, right? Because that is the way of the world. And this heavily curated, heavily capitalism, like it's a lot, and it puts a lot of strain and stress on people. And so again, like starting with giving yourself that grace and working towards your stuff. And if you need to take a break from television, if you need to take a break from reality TV, if that's your jam, like I can't do it because it's too much. But whatever, do what you need to do to take care of you, for sure.
That's right. Yeah. And the grace thing is probably the most important piece, because we beat ourselves up first and foremost, before anything. So giving yourself grace to not go at someone else's pace, to go at your own pace, to make mistakes and be okay with those mistakes, is crucial. So crucial.
Yeah.
Christina, thank you so much for sharing all that you shared. I am so glad that you were able to be on the show today.
Me too, Kia. This is such a full circle moment.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yes.
Christina, if people want to get in touch with you or learn more about you, how can they find you?
Absolutely. So my website, christinasteed.com. I am on Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at @ccsteed. So they can reach out to me there. Yeah. So my website, I have my blog. And then, as you mentioned, I have a podcast, First Over 40. It's available wherever you get your podcasts.
Excellent. And I will include all of your contact information that you shared in the show notes. Again, Christina, thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Kia.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And thank you for following along today. If you enjoyed this episode of Courage Permission Slip and you found us on YouTube, make sure you like this episode and subscribe so that you can be alerted when new episodes are available. And if you found us on your favorite podcast platform, make sure that you rate and review to make it easier for people to find and like this content as well. Until the next time, please be sure to join us on Courage Permission Slip. Talk to you soon.